We asked artists and writers the question, how does the moon see the Earth? And with that question, we wanted to give the moon some agency and reimagine the Earth from a lunar perspective. So we're terrestrial beings, always thinking about the moon and the universe from our own terrestrial perspective. But how does the moon see the Earth? And what does it mean to look upon the Earth from the moon, particularly in the run up to potential human settlement of the moon or colonization? Does the moon look at the Earth fearfully? Does the moon look at the Earth with curiosity? What does it mean to the moon to have people coming out, exploring it, claiming it as territory?
Hello, friends. Welcome to the Greater.Earth channel. I'm really happy you're here today. And I'm very honored and pleased to have someone willing to come and talk about the Moonbound book project. And this is our second video on this project. As I said earlier that I'm planning to do a series on the Moonbound book project. And I'm joined today by Dr. Barbara Brownie. She's a very special person because actually she's a co-editor along with Christopher Cokinos of the Moonbound book. So she knows everything you want to know about who's in it and whatever. So it's very important that we're having this conversation. And there's a lot of things about this project that needs to be talked about. And a little background on Barbara. She is Associate Dean at the of communication at the Royal College of Art in London. I mean, really a top expert. And looking at her biography, I saw that she got interested in space art some years ago. And in terms of materials, she was interested in how materials would react in weightlessness. In 2019, she published the book SpaceWear, Weightlessness and the Final Frontier of Fashion. And this is very, very interesting book. So she's kept this interest in space and cultural aspects going. And most recently, last year, she published another book called Art in Orbit, which is quite a comprehensive book about what's been happening in the arts and space. Not many books have been written about this, which is very important, especially for people involved in this topic. It's really good that stuff like this comes out. And actually, it's this kind of relationship to what this is about and how important this is all about that it makes it very important. And so this project that Barbara is intimately involved with, and I just happen to be a participant, it's both of us believe that it has really potential to be very important to the future of humanity and it becoming a spacefaring species because the next destination for us is the moon. And as we know, the Artemis happened a few weeks ago, which got everybody excited again about going back to the moon. And there's a lot of activity in the space community now from different nations, Europe, especially America, and all of the countries that have joined the Artemis program, but also in China. China, as everybody knows, has a very big vision about going to the moon, and they're working together also with other countries to set up a research laboratory on the moon. And this is very, very interesting, but it would be, I think, for the benefit of everybody if this would be done in an international collaborative way instead of this group or that group being in competition. But anyway, those are things that will hopefully come out of this project to help bring more attention to the potential and the possibilities. And so I'm very happy that Barbara's going to be here today and tell us about how she got involved in the Moonbound Book Project and why is it important. So Barbara, welcome to the channel.
Thank you very much. Lovely to be here. So yeah, I got involved in the Moonbound book after I was invited by the Moon Gallery team. So the Moonbound book is not entirely its own project. It sits in this bigger framework, which is the Moon Gallery. And the Moon Gallery Foundation aims to have a gallery on the moon at some point. And so there's been various missions leading up to that. And the Moonbound book is just one of those. So it is almost a trial run. And if we can get the Moonbound book on the moon, then we know that it has paved the way for a larger thing, which is a collection of physical artworks in the form of the Moon Gallery. So I am involved in one small step towards that Moon Gallery happening at some point in the future.
Well, what's very interesting about this project, and I think this is super important, is that the Moon Gallery Foundation asked the artist, how does the moon see the Earth? And I think what's so important, especially in my work, is it's about perception.
Mm.
So my concept of Greater.Earth is about a new perception of our planet that most people are not aware of. And it includes the moon. And the moon has been so important to the
Mm.
evolution of life on Earth. And actually, it's really important to the future of life on Earth as we go. So how we deal with the moon is very important. So how did the Moon Gallery Foundation come up with this idea?
So this book specifically was that they approached me to say, look, we've got 1 centimeter squared. It's a very small thing. What can we do in that? And so I came up with some kind of provocative questions. And this was the one that really resonated. How does the moon see the Earth? And for me, it just seems perfect timing for that question because we are at a point in our cultural history when the meaning of the moon and our relationship to it is changing because we have throughout all of our history, we've been terrestrial beings, and the moon has been this distant thing. It's been a subject for us, a subject of fascination, subject of inspiration, of curiosity, and it's this far thing that we didn't really know anything about, and so it inspired us to speculate, to mythologize. People wrote poetry. It was inspiration for all sorts of cultural, artistic, creative acts. Partly because of its strangeness and its ever presence. It's always been there, but also always been distant and unknown. And now we know more about it. It's becoming more and more familiar. As we start to land on it more often, as we start to settle there, it'll be increasingly familiar. And it will no longer be this strange distance thing. It will be something that is maybe a new home. And its meaning will change for us. And and so with that question, how does the moon see the Earth? I wanted to kind of flip our relationship around in the way that is happening already at the moment. And we have always gazed up at the moon, and suddenly we're going to have this opportunity to gaze back at Earth from the moon being our new habitat. And so we're flipping that relationship between the Earth and the moon and the Earth, reversing that kind of terrestrial gaze and lunar gaze. Um, so that question is very much it's a timely question, I think. It's prompting people to start to think about these new perspectives on the moon, but also new perspectives from the moon, looking back at the Earth.
Great. Why are you involved in this? I mean, what how do you feel about the moon in this context? Exactly. How do you answer this question?
Yeah, I mean, serendipity is one of the main reasons I think I got involved. Because actually, I was not looking at the moon previously. I was looking at space. And so all my previous research around space up to this point has been about microgravity. Um, and so I was first researching SpaceWear. So I was looking at how fabrics behave in microgravity. Um, that then led me to another fascination, a kind of broader fascination about how all of art and design needs to be revisited for the environment of space, particularly in this weightless environment. And so much of what we do as practicing artists and designers is so terrestrial and so informed by the history of the Earth, physically as well as conceptually and intellectually and emotionally and culturally. So we are very terrestrial beings, shaped completely by this physical environment and the culture that surrounded it. Um, And so making art for space is not just a big cultural shift, it's also a physical shift. And that the extent to which we take for granted gravity in creating art and design was the thing that I then really reflected on. And I think designing or creating art for space means discarding all these things that we take for granted. We don't even talk about these assumptions that we make anymore on Earth. You know, we just assume that an object will have a top and a bottom, and then it'll have weight, and
Exactly.
it'll have a front and a back, and we assume that liquid fills a shape, a vessel, rather than having its own form. All of these things that we assume when we're working with materials and physical objects just no longer applies in space. So that has been really, really fascinating for me. So I've started to think, therefore, about space as a site for art, as a site for creative practice more broadly, um, and not just something that we look at from a distance, because we've had, you know, thousands of years of people, artists being inspired by space, but depicting it as a subject, but not actually directly engaging with it. So, so really, my research has mostly been about the weightless environment specifically. But what the moon does in this particular moment is it represents where we are as humankind in our journey towards being interplanetary, being spacefaring creatures. And and so you can't think about space without thinking about the moon's place in this moment in space exploration, because it will create a window or a gateway for us to then move further out into space. Um, so so I think I'm coming from this wider perspective of wanting there to be art in space more broadly, and recognizing that the moon in this moment is the place where it's at.
It's interesting because the big space visionary, I guess, Magnum guy, Elon Musk, he wanted to make, humanity a multiplanetary species, and his focus was on the Mars. It was Mars, Mars, Mars until quite recently. It's now the moon, and actually, he's gotten quite a bit of money from NASA to develop a lunar lander. So, and other reasons has actually changed his focus to go to
Mhm.
the moon
Well, the moon is the
first.
way you get to Mars.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, for
you
sure.
need to have a moon base in order to then
Yeah,
um, be able to fuel all the rockets to get to
yeah,
Mars. So yeah, you can't go to Mars without going to the moon first.
yeah. But I see. There was a Japanese book, a very beautiful book by the author Issui Ogawa, who wrote "The Next Continent," the moon, and actually the square kilometers, the surface area of the moon, is almost equivalent to the surface area of Africa.
Mm,
So it is actually a continent size, and it's actually an untouched resource in that sense. So there's kind of, if we can manage it properly, we can access this extension of Earth with another continent and extract all of the benefits from it, whatever that means, to settle, to go on, but also maybe to use lunar resources for the benefit of humanity on Earth, because there's quite a lot of material on the moon that it's quite interesting. And I mean, the Moonbound book actually is directed, or at least it's planned to go to the South Pole of the moon. And there we know that there's possibility of water in the craters there. And water is very important, of course, for
mm,
having water. It's a very rare commodity in space, but also you can use water to have oxygen for habitats, but also for making perhaps rocket fuel. So that could enhance the whole space program if it could become, let's say, industrialized. So it's very important. So it's very interesting that the Moonbound book is also going to be landing in this highly contested area, because this has so many geopolitical implications. So I think the potential of the Moonbound book is to put a cultural dimension into this
yeah,
discussion, you know.
yeah, yeah. And I mean, underpinning everything that you've just said, or the unspoken of that, is our history of colonizing new spaces and then stripping of them resources, exploiting them. And I don't think you can talk about using space resources without also acknowledging that history. Um, and artists too make use of resources that are tied to a place. If you have artists working in clay, that clay is from the land. And some of the resources on the moon, um, yeah, they're great for survival. And primarily, initially, that's what we're going to be looking at. So we're going to be looking at how those resources can be mined for survival, for fuel, and so on. But also, they can be used in ways that are meaningful, possibly as art materials. And then you start to get a potentially um, new art materials that can be mined from the lunar surface on a much smaller scale in a way that is less about stripping resources and more about creating art that is at one with the moon, that it really comes from the moon physically, um, in the same way that pigments, for example, in paint very much kind of come from the earth. Um, so the materials that we use are from our home planet,
Hmm.
and there will be lunar materials, there will be Martian materials that will, I think, come to shape and define a lot of the future art that might be created in these new settlements.
Well, that's very fascinating, that aspect too. If, the lunar dust is actually a very abrasive material,
It's
very
not, yes, you wouldn't want, want to be
but maybe the artist
working
can
with
come
it.
up with some way to ameliorate that. So, and there's a lot of basalt on the moon, so there's technologies to center basalt, make 3D printing. So a lot of the ideas about constructing on the moon would be using these kind of technologies. And
Mm.
I've been working with a company, actually a university in Estonia, to build solar power to build photovoltaics from lunar materials. And everybody just knows there's a lot of silicon on the moon. And so you just assume that you would make photovoltaics from silicon. But to make
Extracting it.
photovoltaics from silicon is a very
Mm.
complicated, major industrial process. And so this university, it's the Tallinn University of Technology, they come up with an idea to actually use regolith, and you would take sulfur oxide out of it, and you would make synthetic pyrite. And out of pyrite, you can actually make a photovoltaic material. And it's been done on Earth, but not with lunar materials. But yeah, they just looked at this material and how do you put it together to make this happen? And it's very, very interesting that such a thing is possible. So yeah,
And we don't even know what might be possible in the future
yeah.
yet. I mean, yeah, at the moment, it's quite difficult to extract a lot of the things that we need from lunar materials. Um, and it may be that we will invest the effort and the money into finding a way to extract those things, or we might invent an alternative, something else that could be done instead using resources from the moon. We don't know what ingenuity and inventiveness will happen after we've settled.
Till we get there. And it's
Mm.
difficult to get to the moon, as we've seen. I mean, it's amazing that the United States did it, over 50 years ago. It was such a fantastic way. I mean, but it seems difficult now for all of our high technology and all of our computer power to successfully get little landers to land properly on the moon and to do the thing. But we're a very ingenious species, so I'm sure we'll work that out. But it's fascinating to see the process, and actually, I think it gives a vision to humanity because this is should really be a global project, to do this together. And
Absolutely. And the
not to
reason
say we're
why.
Americans and we're doing this for humanity, but to say we're humanity doing this for us. So yeah, I think that's a lot of potential in that. And I think that's part of the message of the Moonbound Book project, that it's for all humanity and it's in different languages and you have artists from different countries. So I think
That
that's
was
really
very
cool.
important to us, yes, to have different languages. We didn't want it to be, I mean, we have to acknowledge, we are having meetings in English, English language, and the conversation about it, the development of it was very much English language. So we can't escape the fact that to a certain degree, this is a, Western English um, project, but to as much an extent as possible, we wanted to make it international. Um, and one of the ways in which we did that is by inviting contributions in any language and not translating them because we didn't want to um, imply that the translation was needed or that any one language should be dominant or should, take precedence. So it has something for everybody, regardless of the language they speak.
Okay.
And that was particularly important to us that that it represented as a wide variety of different cultures and languages as possible.
So we had this exhibition in February until
Mhm.
the beginning of May in Bulgaria. Are there any plans for another public presentation of the project? Is something
Yeah,
happening
we've got
soon?
something in Portugal coming up, so watch this space.
Oh, excellent, excellent, good. So that's great. Uh, Barbara, I'm going to put links to your books in the show description and also for everybody who's interested on the Greater.Earth website, Greater.Earth. Under resources, we have a library of books, and there's about almost 100 books in there, including Barbara's two books. You can find it there. So I will put links to that too. And there's about over 60 books in our in our library has to do with the moon. So that's really good. So I will put those links in the show notes. And by the way, if you like this series we're doing here on the Greater Earth channel, please subscribe and like it because this helps us get more visibility on YouTube. Everybody needs to have that, and it's important that these ideas get spread around. So, Barbara, are you ready to go to the moon?
Always.
Always. You're a lunatic. That's great. Yeah, the moon is really fascinating. We see it in the night sky all of the time. It just shines there waiting. And
And it has just seeing it in the night sky obviously has taken on new significance for me, knowing that my work will be there, and that will live on beyond me, that exists apart from me, that I have made my mark on something that is so distant. And it is very distant. The moon is a very, very long way away.
yeah,
And this project has made me much, much more aware of that huge distance and how significant it is that us as a species are able to travel that huge distance.
great. Well, thank you so much for
Thank
joining me.
you.
And I hope to have you on here again, maybe with
Lovely.
some of our colleagues in the book project in the future. So thank you and have a nice evening.
Thank you. You too. You too.
Bye, Barbara.
Bye bye.